Hello everybody and welcome to lesson 13, going over file parsing and exceptions. This lesson is really interesting, I think, because it's one of my favorites because we're finally learning how to read in from external data sources. So we're going to have files that are separate from our programs that we are actually going to read in data from and then use that data in our program, which I think is super interesting. The first thing we have to figure out how to do, though, is how to use a file as in a Java program. So the way we represent files is literally a file object in Java. So you can even just call it lowercase file equals new file. And what you put in the constructor of the file object is the path to that file. So the path is the names of the directories leading up to the file name. So if it was in home/downloads, and then it would be tilde/downloads/ your file name. Now all our files are going to be inside of our Java project folder. You can see here I have favoriteicecream.csv, and so you don't even need to have a path in front of it. It can literally just be the file name. Put that in the constructor there. You'll see it's happy. Whoa, file. Oh, forgot that new operator, as always. There we go. So now it's happy. Now, we're going to be importing CSV files into our programs, and they're sitting here. If you double click it, it's going to say it doesn't have a way in Eclipse to open a CSV file, and it's going to open it like in the CSV viewer on your computer. But you can actually view it in Eclipse just as a comma-separated value file, just in text. And all you have to do is just drag it into the editor area, let go, and it'll pop up as a file. And this is how I like to view my CSV files and edit them in Eclipse. And so, again, Austin last semester gave me permission to use his favorite ice cream. I got my favorite ice cream flavor, and then I've got some Vampire Diaries characters again. And so we've got a list of a name and then their favorite ice cream. Just two comma separated values. Name, favorite ice cream, name, favorite ice cream. And I'll leave that guy open. And so once we've created our file, we can then create a scanner to read from that file. So notice I've already got all the imports I'm going to use up there. And just like when we passed system.in as the input stream for our scanner, I'm actually going to put file. So now we're actually going to scan in values from our file object. However, once we put the file name in here, we get a warning. That warning is unhandled exception, type file not found exception. So in Java, these exceptions represent error states. So you've seen those already. You've seen index out of bounds exceptions when we try to get an element out of an array list that's not there. You've seen string index out of bounds exceptions when we try to get the index of a string that's not there. This one, file not found exception, is another one where we try to use a file. Notice we were able to create a file with whatever name we want, but when we use that file, that file could potentially not exist. So nothing's stopping you from just putting complete garbage in this file name. And I'll actually show it to you. And we can even go ahead and run this, and it'll say there's an error, but we can proceed. And notice we get a unresolved compilation problem, file not found exception. So it actually won't even let us run it. So what this is telling us is that we could potentially try to use this file and have it not exist, which would throw a file not found exception. And we know this is a possibility, so our program needs to handle it. The way we can actually handle exceptions and allow them to not just totally crash our program. We can handle errors gracefully. And the way we do that, and when we say to handle an error gracefully, we basically mean understand what error occurred and then take some alternative course of action. Don't just crash the program. Usually that means printing out some kind of output and asking the user to enter something else or take some other alternative action. The way we handle that is a try-catch statement. And try-catch looks like this. You have try and then an open bracket and then close bracket, catch. whatever's inside those brackets, curly braces, again has to be indented. And I've got catch, and then in the catch, you actually list the type of exception you're catching. So I'm going to put capital E exception, and it's actually, I know what kind of exception it's going to be, so I'm going to put file not found exception. Again, if I could spell exception. And this is actually a declaration. It's like a method parameter. So you have the type and the name. The name, kind of like I in our for loops, the name that everybody usually gives it is just E for exception. And then down here, we can, inside the catch block, we'll actually take our alternative course of action. So I'm just going to print file not found. And so, there we go. So if I go ahead and hit the run button, notice this ASDF file does not exist. So notice it says file not found. And actually, I think it's saying I got an error because I forgot to close my scanner. Now notice this. If I try to close my scanner at the end of the program here, Java's going to get mad. It's going to say scan cannot be resolved. That's because of the scope that these curly braces create. So again, anything created inside the curly braces we cannot see outside the curly braces. So because we created our scanner inside our curly braces, we also have to close it inside the curly braces. And I'm actually going to print out something here. I'm going to say this won't print because you'll see that when this exception gets thrown, I don't know why it's saying I got an error. I think it's because I'm not using this. There we go. Well, there's really no error. Maybe it's saying that it knows that it can't find that file. I don't know why it keeps saying there's no error when there's not. But notice it says file not found. Our little print message here did not print. This is because of the way that try-catch statements work. So when we try to use this file here on this line that doesn't exist, I imagine our code blowing up right here. Little explosion, and our exception just flies in the air. It says, hey, I had an error occur. This catch statement down here actually catches that exception and then runs whatever's in the curly braces here. And then if I were to say, whoa, that's not what I wanted. Also didn't want that. If I put a print statement down here, you'll see that this always prints. So execution resumes normally after the body of our catch statement runs. And literally, I think of it, they have a pretty fun illustration here. I literally think of it as catching, playing hot potato with that exception. And so our exception occurs here. We don't even close our scanner. Our print line here doesn't get printed. And we say this always prints. Let's actually see if I can copy this and close my scanner in my catch block. So again, scan can't be resolved there. And so you see that everything that has to happen with this scanner or whatever could potentially cause the exception does have to occur within the try-catch block. Now we can actually prevent these exceptions from occurring, and I want to show you how. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to allow the user to enter a file name. That'll just make it easier to show you that. Actually, no, I don't think I am going to have the user enter file name. We'll just code one in here. And so I'm actually going to say string, I'm going to say file name equals, we'll have our file name there, and we'll actually use that variable in our constructor. And say if file. Now this is really cool. File objects have methods that actually allow us to see if that file exists. If it's a directory, we can't actually scan it. and so the way we want to. So we'll end the program. So I'm going to say file.exists. So if that file just straight up exists, and file.isFile. So if it's not a directory or some other thing that's not a file, we're going to run our program. And we'll go into our try catch block there. Else, I'm going to say I'm going to print out a message, not a valid file. So we won't even enter our try catch block and have to catch an exception if our file doesn't exist or doesn't work. So really this exception shouldn't get thrown, but the try catch still has to be there because Java's going to ask for it. So I'm going to go up to here and format that so my curly braces look good. And let's go ahead and run this. Still don't know why it's saying there's an error. There must be some type of configuration error. So not a valid file. Notice that this exception didn't occur. And if we change this to favorite ice cream, we run that. And we got to the this won't print. So we actually successfully opened the scanner, closed it, and then printed out this won't print. And then, of course, this always prints. So we didn't have an exception thrown. Our file is actually valid. We opened a scanner on it. So now we know we're ready to actually scan the contents of that file. So all I want to do here is create two array lists. I'm going to create an array list of people and then an array list of ice cream. And I'm going to add the person to the ice. I'm going to scan the file, add the person to the people list, and the ice cream to the ice cream list. Pretty rudimentary. So I'm going to go up here when we're creating our file. I'm also going to create two array lists of strings. Call this people. Again, we can use that open and close diamond operator. We don't need to repeat string. Copy that. And I'm going to change this to ice cream. It's going to ask us to import array list. And we're ready. So I'm going to put some white space here for where we actually scan in the file. And let's talk about how scanning in files works. The first thing you want to look at to decide how you're going to read the data in is look at the structure of the file. We've got a line, and on each line, and you can think of this, remember CSVs represent spreadsheets, and you can actually open this in Excel or Google Sheets and it'll put it in the cells for you. So you can think of the first before the first comma, that's one column. So that's the people column. Then you've got the ice cream column. And so every row represents a person and their favorite ice cream. So each line has the separate data that you want to read into the people list and the ice cream list. So most of the time, what I find we do when we read in a CSV file is we read in a line, and then we create in another scanner. So we have one scanner that reads in the whole line. Then we create another scanner over just that string that represents the line, and then parse the data out of that. So we actually have two scanners that get created, and actually a nested while loop. So this first scanner, scan, is just going to get us the individual lines of the file. I'm going to say while scan.hasNextLine. There's a hasNextLine method on a scanner. I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to read in my line. So I'm going to create a string. I'm straight up going to call it line equals scan.nextLine. So this is going to give us each line. So the first time through, this is going to give me my name, comma, cookies and cream. What this allows us to do is it allows us to create another scanner. As I say, scanner line scan equals new scanner, and this is cool. We've never created a scanner just over a string, but you can do that. So now line is going to be the input to this scanner. The other cool thing is that, remember, scanners separate on white space. And so by default, if we called next, we'd get Luke, then we get Basse, then we get comma cookies, and then we get and then we get cream. That's not the way we want to read it in. We want to read in the name as a string and the favorite ice cream as a string. There's actually a way to tell the scanner to use other tokens as delimiters. Remember, token is just an individual character in the string. We want to tell our scanner to use commas as the delimiter. A delimiter is what separates the tokens that the scanner is reading in. So I can actually say, I'm going to use some white space here to keep my scanner stuck together. Line scan dot delimiter. Actually, I believe it's use delimiter. There we go. We're going to tell line scan to use this delimiter, just a comma. So now our scanner is going to separate input on commas. So the first time it'll give us the name. Second time we call next, it'll give us the favorite ice cream. So now, since we know that the name's going to come first and the ice cream's going to come second, we can say string person equals line scan dot next, then string ice cream equals line scan dot next, and then we're done with that line. So we can actually close our scanner. This while loop goes back to the top, and then we go ahead and grab the next line. I have to change that array list to ice creams so it works. And so now that we read in our person and our ice cream, we ended up closing our scanner. I'm going to add these two strings to the list. So I'm going to do people.add person, and then ice cream dot add ice cream. And I actually called that ice creams so the names wouldn't conflict. So we've handled our exception. We're reading in input from the file. We set the delimiter, and you see that person is going to be the first thing on the line. Ice cream is going to be the second because we're separating on commas. At the end here, let's go ahead and print out people and ice cream. So I'm going to erase this always prints. I'm just going to print out people, and then I'm going to print out ice creams. And let's see what we get. See if we read in our data correctly. I still don't know why it's saying there's an error. So we got my name, cookies and cream, matching first in index 0. Austin's name in index 1, Moose Tracks in index 1. So we do have the correct corresponding indexes, and our favorite ice creams were read in correctly. So that's it. This is a very common way of reading in files where we get the line and then create another scanner on the line to read in our input. And while scan has next line, we keep doing that. Checking if a file exists using try catch to catch the file not found exception. You'll see this pattern repeated in almost the same way in our activity. So with that, let's get to it, everybody. Happy coding, and I'll catch you later.